Okay, everyone, welcome to my live chat. It's Friday, June 6th, and this is my first attempt at a live stream. I was looking at the monitor, not even at the camera, so you see it's going to take some practice to get going here. I'm a little bit nervous. It's very strange just talking into the lens of a camera. That's one thing I've learned throughout this process. I've also learned that technical AV audiovisual stuff is not my forte. I'm doing my best. I'm not even 100% sure whether I'm streaming right now, but I'll check. It looks like I am. I can't see the chat. I haven't figured out how to do that yet. I'll give it a whirl here one more time. You know, there's this software that my son installed for me and said I needed to be using it for the live stream, and it's very complex. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to interact with the chat from the very beginning. At the end, I'll switch over to the YouTube channel itself and see if I can answer any questions. I've written some stuff down. I'm aiming to speak for about 30 or 40 minutes, and I want to read some sections from the manuscript. But I think I need to add a bit of context for anyone who's new to the channel or who is just unsure exactly what we're talking about with the Urlinda manuscript. I'm not going to talk too much about it, about the context, because I think most of you know. I certainly hope most of you have watched some of my videos. Honestly, I hope most of you have watched most of my videos, but it still may not be clear what exactly we're talking about because I don't tend to go into the specifics. I think anyone who's drawn to the channel probably has a reason for coming. So like I said, my focus is going to be on readings here, but I thought about how I'm going to start the stream today, and two questions that often get asked occurred to me, and one of them is why should anyone care about what the Uralinde is, or what got me into into making the videos? And my honest answer is I really don't know exactly. I've thought about it and thought about it. I'm not an expert in the Frisian language. Like some other channels, the History with Hilbert is one, and there's a few other channels out there with professors of the Frisian language and specialists in old languages, like Jackson Crawford, who talks about Frisian in at least one of his videos. I'm not like that. I'm not a university professor. I studied Chinese of all languages at the university, but I didn't even finish that. When my first child was born, I quit school and became a professional translator of German to English, later Dutch as well. And I just kind of fell into the Urlinda thing. I was told about the manuscript about 20, maybe 19 years ago now, when I was on board a ship in Friesland on the Wadden Sea, which is the estuary, the kind of tidal estuary of the North Sea on the north coast of the Netherlands and Germany. And he mentioned, we were talking about languages. I think, I was the only English speaker on a ship with a bunch of Dutch people. And we communicated in English and some in German. And throughout the trip, I was just interested in learning as much Dutch as possible because everyone else was speaking their own native tongue. So we got into talking about languages and inevitably, I think history became the topic. And it was just kind of mentioned to me, oh, there's this book called The Linde. Had I ever heard of it? It purports to tell a story of history that is different to the one that we all learned in school. And we talked about it at some length, and it was very interesting. They told me that there was a language all its own, and it's a different way of writing that is found nowhere else. And I kind of forgot about it until I guess it was about 7 years ago now, maybe not quite that far back, but somewhere around there, where I heard an interview with a fellow named Jan Ott, who had made his own retranslation of the manuscript into English, kind of a modernized version, the only version that was popular at the time. So there's a few other versions in English, but the only version that kind of most people knew at the time was by a fellow named William Sandbach. It had been done in 1890, I think it was published. And Jan Ott was dissatisfied with some of the solutions, and just the language in general is a bit clumsy. So I found, I've read through some of the Sandbach translation now, and the language it appears to us to be clumsy. I don't know, maybe that's the way people would have talked in 1890. But some of his solutions seem, they're hard to understand. It's just not, it's very inconcise in some places. And so Jan made his own retranslation of the book, and that's how I rediscovered the Linde and met Jan. And I found, because Jan is not a native English speaker, I found some things in there that I thought could be improved in the English language. And the more I read through the original language, which is the kind of the novelty of his translation, is that he added in the original language right next to the English, right on top of it, so you could compare and read it in English and then read it in the original language, and then using my knowledge of Dutch and German and English, kind of piece together what it means. And I found some things that I believed were mistranslations, and or that could have been more concise. I contacted Jan, and he was happy for the help. And over the past several years now, we've been revising and re-revising and studying and searching into etymologies and kind of really going in depth into the original language, and in my case, going more in depth into English itself to come up with the clearest possible translation. It's maybe not the most precise in the sense that we don't go word for word in many places, but I think it's the most precise translation out there at the moment in terms of conveying what seems to be meant. And in most places, we really do go word for word, because the interesting thing about this old language, which we call Freias, right? So it's not Frisian. People think it's Frisian because it comes from Frisia, what we now call Frisia. But the language itself is certainly not modern Frisian. It's also not Old Frisian, which is something from the Middle Ages. This language would be older. And I say would be, because there's the question of authenticity, which I'll get into in a minute. So we call it Freias, based on what the manuscript itself, the word that the manuscript itself uses for all things born of the children of Freya, after whom the culture is named. And I'm not going to get into any details about that now, except that there are three mothers of humanity named in the book. One is Freya, one is Finda, and one is Laida. And so this book recounts the history of the Freya people, the children of Freya, and so the word in English would be like Fryish, and in the original language it's Freyas. So that's why we call it that. So the the point that I was trying to make is that I'm not. Nobody is an expert in this language because it just only exists in this manuscript, and that calls to mind the second question that often gets asked. Generally, it's not a question. Generally, it's just said, "Oh, that's not real. It's fake." Three guys wrote it. That's the general consensus among everybody who claims to have the right to have an opinion about the thing, even though in most cases, when you ask, the people have never engaged with the material at all, because it's just a joke, right? You would be ruining your own reputation as an academician, but you just there's all kinds of names they'll throw at you, everything from conspiracy theorist to New Ager to there's so many pigeonholes. There's so many little drawers that they'll put you in, little boxes that people want to put you in when you even mention this manuscript. But for the most part, in my experience, when I've kind of pursued the matter and said, when I've asked them why is it not authentic, it's just obviously not. But that question, it's a valid question. Why do I think it is authentic? And my answer for that is also, I don't know. I don't know whether it is authentic. But, the same, I look at the world now the way it is. And the Orlinda manuscript describes a lot of things that could be valid even now. And so it's got some kind of a universal truthiness to it. And then the other answer to that question of why I think it's authentic, or is it authentic, is, today we've got social media, we've got Hollywood, we've got the music industry, we've got so many avenues of social engineering, for lack of a better term. And what I've noticed is the same folks who will say you're stupid if you believe that the Urlinda is an actual thing. If you don't believe that it was just written by three guys who barely knew each other, and all had busy lives of their own and careers, documented careers. If you don't believe that, you're stupid. But at the same time, if you look at Hollywood and all of these things that I mentioned before and see maybe agenda is not exactly the right word, but see it as social engineering. If you mention the Esalen Institute or Tavistock, who, their entire reason for being is to psychologically manipulate masses, whether it's Tavistock, they do human resources stuff a lot, or these think tanks that find ways to implement political agendas and things like that. So if you look at that and you mention, you say something like that, then you're obviously, there's a bunch of different titles that will be attached to you. But by these same people who believe that three fellows came up with this highly complex story. And the reasons they give are, oh, it's fragmentary. It is fragmentary. It's just bits and pieces, right? Or the language doesn't jive with what we consider to be Old Frisian, or we can't find other examples of this language, or the script itself. We can't find other examples of the script. And those are kind of valid arguments. Like, yeah, the script thing bothers me. I've tried and tried and tried to find scripts, ways of writing, styles of writing that match. And yeah, it's very similar to the way Latin is written. It's very similar to the way Greek is written in certain respects. But in the end, if you look at it, it's just our alphabet in a kind of a stylized way of writing. And so it does bother me that I can't find any other examples of the script. But that's just like one little thing that could be explained in so many different ways, and there are similarities, like I said. So you could say that the Latin script and the Greek script are it's kind of a mix. You could argue about it, but what makes no sense to me is that in a world today where we've got entire industries and huge think tanks and people study to in order to manipulate people, and that three fellows would have come up with something this complex on their own. For me, it's literally the definition of a conspiracy theory. There's three guys who got together and came up with this elaborate hoax that for some reason they foisted upon the world. For what reason? Like, so if I look at Hollywood and the music industry and stuff, there's plenty of reasons you could name, whether it's money or power or, agendas. I can't figure out what the reason behind this conspiracy would be. And that is one of the main things that makes me at least remain open to the idea that could be authentic. Not to mention the complexity of the language. And yeah. And another thing I failed to mention, I'll probably forget a bunch of things that I wanted to say, but one of the reasons I started making videos themselves is because most of the content out there is either debunking the Urlinda. So it's just, there's very few videos out there like this, but they're out there where it's just like, there's a bunch of idiots believe that this book is this obvious fake. What they love to throw that out there, obvious fake. Is real. So there's those videos. And then you've got the videos that are people who are really also in love with this book, like me. So, the main reason that I make videos is because I just fell in love with the book, the language, the story, the atmosphere that it conveys, everything about it, whether it's real or not, doesn't even matter to me at this point. It's just something hit me here. So there's other people out there who have also fallen in love with the book, but they haven't engaged with it very much, so they don't have the linguistic skills, and in some cases, in most cases that I've seen, and then they go overboard with some of the conclusions that they draw from their superficial understanding. And then there's the ones who are very confrontational, who come out and say, "Oh, then this person didn't understand. This translation's bad," I don't know anything about the language. I can't speak even modern Frisian, but I know. I'll tell you that this is the wrong one, and there's nefarious purposes behind it, and that was probably the thing that got me really motivated to make my first video. So I'm not an expert. Like I said, I am not an expert, but I felt I needed to defend the translation initially because I understand English and I understood the language that I was reading to a certain point. Now I understand it much better, of course, being engaged with it for years. But that was my original intent, my original motivation was to just say, look, what? And then the new thing is the AI videos. There's every 5 minutes, there's a new AI video out there. And I've noticed that about YouTube in general or the internet in general now. Like everywhere you look, it's just AI generated content. It's really becoming very difficult to tell the difference now. But there's a lot of obvious AI stuff out there about Ora Linda. And it's always the same stuff. It's basically just what they find on Wikipedia, and the text is text to speech, and then some stupid pictures to go with it that have nothing to do with anything, and then they make references that are just wrong. And so there's a lot of information spreading about Ora Linda that has nothing to do with the manuscript itself, and it's damaging to the cause of trying to get to the bottom of it all. So I'm going to keep looking at my notes. The first thing I wanted to talk about in the context of the book is the name itself, Ora Linda. I throw that out there again and again and again. What is even that? So the book is not called the Ora Linda book. It was called the Ora Linda book by the first fellow who translated it. The Jan Otema was his name, and then that was taken over by Sandbach when he translated the original Dutch translation into English. And so in English, it's become known as the Ora Linda book. But what does that even mean? It's quite a mundane explanation, actually. So the manuscript is in two halves. The first half is called in the original language Het Boek der Adele Volster, and that means the book of the followers of Adela, or the Adela followers. And Adela was she starts off the narrative starts off with Adela at a council meeting, an assembly meeting in this democratic society, and she, they're about to be overrun by enemies on all sides, and natural disasters keep tearing everything down as they continued to do in that region, for centuries, and will again at some point, I guess. And she suggests recording all the old teachings that were written on the walls of the towers, the burgs. And so the first half of the book is actually does have a title. It's the Boek der Adele Volster, and so it could be called that. Like that would make a lot of sense just to call the book that. But so Adela's family, eventually her husband at the time, Apel, was the reeve of the Linda wards. So what does that mean? So there was a place probably around modern day Leeuwarden called the Linda wards. Wards in the meaning of like we still use the word ward nowadays for a part of a city or something. It's the Linda administrative region, and a place name in England, for example, might be Lindenworth, right? The word worth you would get also from that same etymology. And I found actually that name exists, Lindenworth. I didn't find it a place called Lindenworth, but I did find it as a family name. And so Linda is a kind of a tree, and the Linda wards. So maybe there were a lot of the linden trees in that region. There is also a stream called the Linde, but up in that region now, even today, it's a very small, minor kind of a stream. And perhaps it takes its name also from the fact that it was the Linden wards at the time. But I don't think the name of the region comes from the stream because it's such a minor waterway, not even navigable. But it could the other way around. It certainly could have been the name, the source of the name. Um, so yeah, the Linden wards, right, were an important region. The Leeuwarden is even now the capital of Friesland, the province of Friesland in the Netherlands. And so the reeve of the Linden wards was quite an important post. And her husband was the reeve at the time of the writing of the Book of the Adele Volster. And her family then after that was there wasn't there was no peerage and no family based bloodline based succession at the time, but her family traditionally held the post of the reeve of the Linden wards. So you could say the reeve over the Linden wards, right? So the like the governor over the Linden wards, and so that eventually became their family name, the Overlinde, which is depending on the epoch in which the part of the manuscript was written, either they were called Overlinda or Uralinda. And that's just the way the book got its name. The fellow who brought the book to light, who found it in his inheritance, it was a family heirloom, and he decided he wanted to. This is the story, right? The academics would tell you, no, this is not true. He wrote it. He made it all up. But his story, anyway, is that he found it and wanted to know what was in it, because even though the letters look like our modern alphabet in many ways, they're still not that easy to read. So he was unable to read it just graphically, and there's a lot of words in there that he didn't know. There's it's if you know English and Dutch and German and some Danish, you can make out a lot of the words, pretty much most of them. But there's a few in there that are tough, and so he needed an expert, and he found a fellow and had him translate it, and his name was Cornelis Overlinde. And so when this Ottima ended up eventually getting his hands on the book and translating it, he archaized the name Overlinde back to Uralinda, and yeah, so that's how it got its name, because Jan Ottima decided that that's what it should be called. So we called it Codex Uralinda to differentiate it from the Sandbach translation, the Uralinda book. But now we've kind of started calling it the Uralinda book because it's just what everyone calls it, right? That's what everybody's searching for on the internet. And before they start, learning from AI content, I'd rather have them learn from our content and actually, engage with the material, which you can do through the wiki site that Jan has put together with a bunch of really excellent people at the Uralinda Foundation. There's this wiki site. I've got, hang on, somewhere there's a picture of it. camera back on. Yeah, so you can check it out for yourself, rather than relying on a bunch of conjecture and haters and all of that stuff. It's really, it's got to be a group project because it's like I said, it's so complex. There's so much to look into. We've looked into the linguistics quite a lot, as much as possible. But I mean, it would be great if we had some people who are linguistic experts and understand how to use the resources available there, and archaeologists and things like that, and a lot of money is involved in exploring these things, which I don't have and the foundation doesn't have. So it's definitely got to be a bit of a crowdsourced and crowd-funded project. So today I'm going to read a couple of sections, but I'm not going to read in order because most people never get past the first half, the book of the Adela followers. Most people never get past that part. Matter of fact, most people just know about the first chapter where they talk about Freya, Finda, and Laida, describe them, and maybe Freya's Tesh, which is the kind of foundational, the original 12 rules for life. I always wonder if, there's that book by that Peterson guy, 12 Rules for Life, I think it's called. And interestingly enough, Freya's Tesh is a list of 12 rules for life. And they seem a lot more profound to me than the ones that can be found in that book. They might read the Tesh and a couple of the laws, and then they just get lost. A lot of people get stuck on the whole, racial aspect of the beginning, because the three mothers are three different racial groups, and it becomes confused, and people never move on, don't seem to move on to the second half of the book, and that's the part that is more approachable. Really, it's less idealized. It's more historical, I guess, would be the right way to put it. And so I'm going to start with the second half of the book. The main reading I'm going to do today is from the second half of the book. There's a few other things I want to say, and there will be some stuff from the first half as well. The second half is kind of, like I said, it's less idealized. Both half of the books have a sad ending, right? It's not a happy book. The first half of the book ends with the killing of the last folk's mother, as we call it. In the book itself, it's called Eremutter. So the honorary mother. The honor mother, I guess, would be the most precise translation, honor mother, but that doesn't make a lot of sense. Eremutter is, a mother of honor might be also a good translation, but the mother of the people. So she's like the symbolic mother after Freya, who was let's say the mythical mother. There was a succession of honorary mothers who kind of played the role of Freya as the moral authority in the culture, and that is the way the first half of the book ends. Is the last mother is killed, and then starts the era without the mothers. They tried a few times to elect a new mother, and some of the groups in the diaspora who left and went out to Greece and India and subcontinent and southern Europe and places like that, North Africa, there's stories of them having a mother, but a folk's mother, so the Eremutter, who's the moral authority over all children of Freya, I guess that never happened again. I may be wrong. They may have actually had one. A couple of times, people from the outside came in and tried to force a new mother to be, folksmother to be elected over the people as a puppet. That's when the puppet kings started, and you'll learn more about this as time goes by, and hopefully some of you already know about it. But really, the book in itself, and especially the second half, is like the Tolkien uses the phrase "the long defeat" in Lord of the Rings. There's a section where Galadriel, who is also a mother of her folk, talks about fighting the long defeat. And really, that's what this book is about. It's about fighting the long defeat. It's a story of a people with a strong moral compass who lost their way in many ways and uh, were then just overrun by foreign powers who came in and used their own moral codes against them, as well as the immorality that is seems to be in all people. Just took advantage of it, and it's the story of how just it got worse and worse and worse over time until at the very end, you've got the hereditary kings started, right, which was a thing that they avoided initially. And it kind of, if you look at it as a historical document, you can see how it's just the beginning of the end, the beginning of what we've got going on now, what we eventually had with the whole nobility and feudalism, and then later the banking families, and just you know families, bloodlines, people, and groups of people who just decided they're the boss and they're going to remain the boss. So that's what this is. It's the story of the long defeat, and the first writing in the second half of the book really specifically or explicitly addresses that. Um, but the lesson from the book is not that everything's hopeless, right? The lesson to me seems like, if I had to put it in a nutshell, it would be to still remain true to your own heart, right? Because in your heart is where God lives. That's the story of the book. And you know right and wrong. You just implicitly know it. You don't need 10 commandments to know right and wrong, right? If you look at the 10 commandments, you look at some of them and you go, what is the point of even mentioning that, right? Some of them make sense, right? But the other ones, at least to me, sometimes I just look at it and go, why would that be addressed? And it's much easier in the Urlinda book. There's the concept of Eva, and I did have a slide about that. I think it was this word Eva. And it's on manuscript page 32. The word Eva is too sacred for mundane use. Therefore, we have learned to say even. Eva refers to the rules that are imprinted equally upon the hearts of all people, in order that they may know what is right and what is wrong, and by which they are able to judge their own deeds and those of others. That is, insofar as they have been brought up well and not in depravity. And there is another meaning attached. Eva also means a-like, water-like, level and smooth, as water that neither storm nor anything else has disturbed. When the water is disturbed, it becomes uneven, unlevel, but it always has a tendency to become even again. That lies in its nature, just as the inclination towards justice and freedom reposes in Freya's children. We derive this disposition from our feeder, Varalda's spirit, which speaks strongly in Freya's children, and shall thus remain with us eternally. Eva is also the second symbol of Varalda's spirit, which abides in us eternally, even and undisturbed, despite the hardships facing the physical body. Evenness and temperance are the marks of wisdom and righteousness, which must be sought after by all pious people and possessed by all judges. If therefore the people wish to make rules and pronounce judgments that will remain good always and everywhere, these must be the same for all people. The judges must pronounce their decisions according to the Eva. If any evil is committed, for which no Eva are established, a general assembly must be called, where a decision shall be reached in accordance with what Varalda's spirit reveals to us, in order to judge rightly about all things. Doing thus, our discernment shall never fall short. If instead of doing right, men commit wrongs, there will arise quarrels and discord among the people and the towns. Thence arise civil wars, through which all is destroyed and laid to ruin. But O foolishness, while we are busy inflicting harm upon one another, the spiteful people of Finda shall come with their false priests to rob you of your possessions, to defile your daughters, to corrupt your morals, and in the end to clap the bonds of slavery around every Freya neck. So you see a lot of the use of the word eternal in here, and the word Varalda is the name of God. We'll go into that at another time. You see he's also called the feeder of the people. I think some people have translated that as father, and we'll talk about at the end why that may or may not be a good translation. But Eva is literally that thing by which all things are judged, and or should be, and that is the lesson for me from the book. So no matter what, like it says, despite the hardships facing the body, and so you've got the Eva that tells you the right and wrong, as long as you haven't been brought up in depravity, which a lot of us have. Like I have. Like my own family was quite depraved, and the society around us is depraved. The neighborhood I lived in was depraved. It's just, everywhere you look, school. I can pinpoint a few wholesome episodes in my life, but mostly they are bordered by depravity. So it's hard to find Eva, right? And that is the story of the long defeat. It's this Eva is just getting knocked and buried by all kinds of horrible happenings and intentions of people, and your own intentions. And so the story for me is like, despite the long defeat, despite all of these things, God lives right here, And so what we learn is to come back to it again and again and again, and try to keep coming back to it. And that's like kind of all you can do, right? You're not going to win, but you win by not losing that. So I guess that's another reason why I read the book. Yeah, I wanted to check real quick on the stream itself to see to see if somebody's they're telling me that you're not streaming, by the way. Um, let's see if I can go to my channel page and just find out if I'm even on. Bear with me for a moment, please. Okay, it looks like it's live. There's even some chat activity, so I'll come back to that later. Great. Then I better go back to the monitor here, though. Sorry, I can't interact with the chat directly. Yeah, just I guess I'm going to skip over that. I mentioned Freies Tesch, and I thought I would read just the very first line of Freies Tesch because it goes together with this idea of Eva. Freya said before her 12 rules to live by, "Good fortune awaits the free. In the end, they shall see me again. But only those can I deem free who are slave neither to another nor to their own appetites." And so Eva and Freedom are two very important principles in Uralenda. The people, the name of the mother of the people is Freya, which is also the word that means free. So frei, and so the entire culture is literally named free people, the free people of the West, as Tolkien would have called them as well. And so it became being a slave to someone else, but also being a slave to your own. We said appetites here. We originally had the word passion. I thought today of another word that could have been used as a translation, your own impulses. The word is tochta, and it also, like Eva, has a lot of different meanings. You'll find in the original Freya's language that a word has a bunch of different meanings. And it's hard to narrow it down in modern language because we've become such specialists that the language becomes more specialized. Plus, English is a mix of Freyas plus Saxon plus Latin plus all kinds of different languages, Greek, and so the word tochta could be translated in a number of different ways, but basically the idea is that you're not being a slave neither outwardly nor inwardly. And we all are, right? I am. I mean, God, I'm a slave to my tochta. It's crazy. And I know, I was going to say, I know I can't beat it, but you're only beat when you stop trying, right? That's the story of the long defeat. That's the lesson that I get from it all. So I'm going to read the very first part that really addresses this long defeat. And it's written by Adelbrost, who was the son of Adela, who I mentioned before. She had two sons, I believe, or maybe three. The very first writing in the second half of the book is by Adelbrost, and it's quite a sober look at what's happening. In fact, he never got to write anything else in the book. It seems when you read this that he's planning on doing some writing, but you find out in the very next writing that he was murdered by nobody knows, but it was quite a brutal murder. And I'm going to read the section We call it Intrigues and Divisions on manuscript page 87. My name is Adelbrost, son of Apel and Adela. My folk elected me reeve over the Linden wards. Therefore I will add to this book, in accordance with the advice of my mother. After the Magi was defeated and Freiesburg restored, a new mother had to be elected. The last mother had never named a successor, and there was no trace to be found of her will. After 7 months, an assembly was planned in Groningen, since it is close to the Saxon marks. My mother was chosen, but she was unwilling to become folksmother. She had saved the life of my father, through which they had fallen in love, and so wished to be married. Many tried to dissuade my mother from her decision, but she replied, "An honorary mother must be as pristine within as she outwardly appears, and equally well disposed to all her children. Because I love Apel more than anything else in the world, I cannot be such a folksmother." So spoke and declared Adela. But the other Burgmaids all desired to become mother. Each district stood behind its own maid and would not yield, so none could be elected, and the realm fell into disorder. Hereafter may you understand. Liutgert, the king who recently died, was elected when the mother was still alive, and apparently with the unanimous support of all districts. He had the privilege to reside at the Grand Palace of Dokheim, and, while the mother was still alive, he had been regarded there with great honor because the palace was always so full with messengers and horsemen from far and wide, such as had never before been seen. But ever since the mother's death, he had been shunned, as all feared that he would bypass the law to make himself master and rule like the slave kings. The chieftains also falsely believed it was enough to watch merely over their own districts, and the one no longer cooperated with the other. The Burgmaids were even worse. They were all immensely proud of their own wisdom, and if a reeve did something without consulting them, they sowed distrust between him and his people. If there was a case concerning several districts, and one maid, and I have to start that again. If there was a case concerning several districts and only one maid was consulted, the others claimed her decision was biased in favor of her own state. Such intrigues brought division over the land and tore the bonds of union so badly that jealousy arose between the folk of one district and another, and the most insignificant of disputes led to estrangement. The result was that the Gola, or Trovits, Druids, took over all our lands west of the Scheldt, and the Magi took the eastern region all the way up to the Weser. How it happened was uncovered by my mother. Otherwise, this book would never have been written, though I have lost all hope that it will help save us. Thus I do not write this under the illusion that in so doing I shall be able to reclaim or preserve the land. This, I believe, is impossible. I write only for future generations, so that they may know how we were lost, and so that all may learn from this that every evil begets its own penalty. So you see, it's quite a pessimistic writing. And rightly so, as he was murdered shortly thereafter. But what strikes me is that the main thing that he wanted later generations to learn is that every evil begets its own penalty. In other words, listen to your heart, don't commit evil. That is the lesson, not, hey, these people are the problem. Right? The problem is you. The problem is that the era are always there for you to listen to, but because of the depravity surrounding us, we don't listen to it. And that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about today. Those are the readings that I wanted to do. It's a good basis to start understanding the Ora Linda, and I'm going to read more in future episodes. Next Friday, I hope to put this together again. My my health is not great, and I may have some surgery coming up, so it's possible that within the next few weeks there will be no Friday lives, but my intention is to, up until that point, do as many as possible, and afterwards continue on. I did want to point out the word mother and father as used in that. So he talks about his mother and father, which we use for lack of better words in English. So the word father never comes up in the manuscript. The word vader does come up, and we had that in the Eva section when we talked about Varalda being the feeder of the people. So the vader is the feeder, which suggests that the etymology of father is feeder. Makes a lot of sense. And mother is mostly. So in the very first letter, they do use the word mother, but throughout the manuscript, mostly the word mem is used to talk about the physical mother of a person. And so we've got the word mom from mem, and the word that's used for father is not vader, but tot. And tot is dad. So I have always tended to think of mom and dad. Even before I started thinking about languages, I just assumed that like mom and dad are modern inventions, right? Because I knew the word mother and I knew the word father. And so I thought mom and dad are very modern inventions, kind of just like because that's the way we are nowadays. We tend to shorten things as much as possible. But the Ora Linda suggests that mem and tot are the original way to refer to your mother and father. And that there's a section that I'll probably read next week where one of the Burgmothers, I don't think she was Volksmother, but I may be wrong. Sometimes it's confusing. Really scolds the people for using the word mother and father, because those are reserved for God and Freya, basically, or the Volksmother. And so I thought that was interesting. Also, the word so the word mother, the word mot is also means mind. So we've translated as mind, and like the word mood. You'll know the word mood from English, right? Or Gemüt in German, gemoed in Dutch, and so that's where that word comes from, is from like mind. So she's like the like I said before, the mother, the Volksmother is the moral authority of the people, like the mind of the people. Also goes together with the fire. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that another time. And the word tot, I started thinking about that. So there is still the word in German tat. That means, so like a tat is something you do, right? And it's generally kind of like a larger thing you do, like Heldentat, a heroic deed. Do the word deed, tat, deed, right? And the word in Dutch is in dat. So we get the word dad from probably, I guess, from a deed, a tat, a dod that you do. So you got mom, who's like all right, mem and mother are two different things, right? You do refer to your mother as your mother, so the mom is maybe the moral authority, and dad is the guy who goes out and does stuff. But the word mem also obviously is, yeah, you can think of breastfeeding, like the sound that it makes when the child is breastfeeding. Mem, 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 mem. So I just thought those were interesting bits of. Trivia is not the right word, but to look at some of the original language and see where a lot of our modern words would have come from, if this is indeed what it purports to be. So I'm going to have a quick look at the chat and see if there's any questions that I could answer quickly. I don't see any question marks to show me. Yeah, the AI stuff is horrible, Colin. I agree. Okay, good night. Jan has to put his kids to bed. He's got quite a few. Okay, well, I don't see anything that really needs to be addressed specifically. So I'm going to call that an evening. Thank you very much for coming. And I hope to see some of you. Well, I hope some of you will see me next week as well. Bye bye.